Okay, I'm going to share the screen. That's one. Wait. Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Here we go. Okay. Good evening and welcome, everyone. Understanding Reincarnation, Lesson 5. It's right in front of you. Reincarnation, more than a fascinating topic, Judaism provides a practical way to imagine this mystical process and explains why it is important both to departed souls and to our lives today. I'm going to put stuff on the screen. Some of it I'm going to read, some are not. But when I'm not reading it, obviously you should read it yourself, and you can read it yourself. So please go ahead. I think more people are just logging in. I'll just wait just a couple of seconds to let people log in. Let's see here. Right. Okay, so reincarnation is a fascinating topic. By the way, this is a part of a 6-week course. Today's a standalone lesson on reincarnation. So even if you didn't do the previous 4, you should be able to get to this one. Okay? First question is, when we say reincarnation, it makes some of us feel uncomfortable. Like reincarnation, I don't know. I mean, it could be, reincarnation could be a little bit, denial of personal identity you have in the bottom right. Like, am I not my own person? Am I somebody who was actually alive in the previous lifetime, Like, do I not have my own personal identity? Am I not Chaim Yankel? Am I not Uriel Wigler? Who am I? But on the other hand, when you talk about reincarnation, it gives you see on the left-hand side of the screen, connection with the past. It gives you something that it's not just me, it's not just about me, it's about generations before me. It's about many other people. So there's a connection with the past. Maybe I'm my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my future generations. So when we talk about reincarnation, it makes some of us feel comfortable, some of us feel uncomfortable. And tonight we are going to dissect and delve into this Kabbalistic concept that is so fascinating and see how it's relevant and helpful in our lives today. Okay, so first of all, by the way, if anybody has any questions in the middle, just feel free to stop and ask any questions. I'm going to also be monitoring the chat. And look at exercise 5.1 right over here. Okay, 1 second. Let me just get this going here. Okay. So here's just a list of some basic questions, which we are going to resolve tonight, okay? So belief in reincarnation is basic to Judaism, true or false? We'll discuss. Number 2, in the Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another, true or false? We will discuss tonight, but I want you to start thinking about this. Number 3, a human soul can be reincarnated in a non-human entity such as an animal or a plant. A dog, a cat, a spider, a plant, true or false? Number 4, a reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone who lived in a previous lifetime, true or false? Number 5, the purpose of doing good in one's current lifetime is to be reincarnated as a person of higher status. Number 6, true or false? The soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins committed in a prior life. And number 7, most souls today are reincarnations. This is the topic for tonight. This is what we're going to discuss and dissolve and look into and really figure out what is going on. And like I mentioned before, when we talk about reincarnation, some people make it feel comfortable, some people not comfortable. So, let's see where we hold with this idea, with this topic. Okay. First source in front of us is a prayer that we recite every single night, right? Every single night before we go to bed, we recite this prayer. My kids say it. I say it to my kids every single night. By the way, I'm monitoring the chats. I see a question just came up. Is this the same as revival of the dead? Tchiyat HaMetim. So Tchiyat HaMetim is something that we're not really going to be discussing tonight. That's resurrection of the dead. We're going to delve into it because it's similar to reincarnation, but we're going to focus primarily on reincarnation. And it's a tangent. We're going to go into a little bit into the resurrection of the dead. But this is the prayer we recite every single night. Master of the universe. My kids say it. I've been saying it since I don't know, since I was a kid. I hereby forgive anyone who has angered or vexed me or sinned against me, either physically or financially, against my honor or anything else that is mine, whether accidentally or intentionally, inadvertently or deliberately, by speech or by deed, in this incarnation or in any other. This is the basic prayer recited by Jews every single night. Now, I'm not going to delve into why we ask everybody for forgiveness. That's a great thing, and it's a topic for another time. I'm not going to delve into it now. But what you see from this prayer is that I'm asking God Almighty, Ribono Shel Olam, please let me forgive. I hereby forgive anybody who insulted me or angered me or did anything to me in this reincarnation or in the previous. Gilgul. Gilgul means like a wheel, or in the previous reincarnation, basically. So we see over here that this is from the Siddur. This is something, you know, we Jews love to argue about everything and anything, but the reincarnation is something universal that we actually, none of us argue about. We don't argue about this at all. Reincarnation, Ashkenazim, Sephardim, Yemenite, everybody actually agrees with this topic. Nobody argues, so it's a basic belief in Judaism that reincarnation is something that applies, and we all believe in it. By the way, I think even there's a survey, I think a large percentage of Americans, even atheists, actually believe in the concept of reincarnation. So tonight we need to clarify this. We need to understand this. What does it mean, reincarnation? What are we talking about? Who's reincarnated? How are they reincarnated? So we're going to delve into the mystical, Kabbalistic meaning behind this to get a better understanding. Okay, so the screen in front of you. Number one, reincarnation is a Jewish belief. If the soul is reincarnated, when does it experience Gan Eden or Gehenna? So, you know, we know that when a person passes away, he or she go to paradise or go to what's called Gehenna, hell. And last week, whoever was here in the class, we discussed at length hell and paradise. We're not going to get into that now. But if the soul is reincarnated, is there such a thing as paradise? Hell? Where does the soul go to? Why is the soul reincarnated? So in order to figure this out, let's go to the beginnings. Let's understand where we came from and why we need to be reincarnated. Okay? So in order to understand this, just look at the screen in front of you and I'm going to explain this. History of the souls, where we come from. Adam, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, 12 tribes, 70 souls of Jacob's family, 600,000 root souls. Bear this in mind. I'm going to explain exactly what this means right up here. Okay, you should be able to see the source in front of you right over here. For those joining, we're just starting now in reincarnation, so you could just latch on to what we're learning now. Okay, the text number 2 in front of you. False. Text number 2. It all began with one master soul. Judaism began with one, think of it as one like master soul, the soul of Adam. Adam was the first human being created by God Almighty himself. His body, his soul, included all future souls of all future generations. Subsequently, this master soul passed on to Abraham, and then to Isaac, and then to Jacob, and was then divided among the 12 tribes. Afterward, soul was further partitioned among the 70 souls, the descendants of Jacob that accompanied him to Egypt, and eventually among the 600,000 souls who left Egypt. The Torah states explicitly that there were 600,000 Jews who left Egypt. These were the 600,000 souls that came from the 12 tribes, from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and came from Adam. So if you want an analogy to understand what this means, think like, let's talk about like a tree, for example. Think of a master tree. And this tree then has roots and roots and roots and roots and growths which come from it. So this tree kind of implanted itself to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the 12 tribes, and this 600,000 offshoots, so to speak. By the way, it's a very important, I don't know what everybody has, a preconceived concept of reincarnation. So just whatever you know about reincarnation, don't worry about for now. Just focus on what we are going to discuss. And I'm starting literally from the basics. And I'm going to take you all the way to understanding exactly how reincarnation works. Okay.
Rabbi, you are on mute, I think.
Sorry. Am I good now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Thanks for that. So think about it as if we start off with one single tree, and then this tree went into many limbs, many branches, many twigs, and now we are all 600,000 of us with the original soul, so to speak. And now we're going to explain where we are today as opposed to those 600,000. Okay, but back to the book of Kabbalah, because this is so important to understand. It's going to help us with everything we know about reincarnation. I want to take you and focus on the original thing. Okay, so this is text number 2 from Rabbi Chaim Vital, who was a student of Arizal. Now text number 3. Text number 3 states as follows. Furthermore, you must know that every person must fulfill all of the 613 commandments. If a soul does not fulfill all 613 commandments in action, speech, and thought, it must be reincarnated until it completes them all. Okay, let's just explain that a second. The Bible has 613 commandments. The commandments such as lighting Shabbat candles, being kind to the poor, visiting somebody, putting on tefillin, sacrificing in the temple, many different mitzvot. Every single soul must fulfill every single one of those 613 commandments in order to fulfill its mission and to find eternal peace and rest. So there's 600,000 souls. Every single one of these 600,000 souls must fulfill all the 613 mitzvot. But not only does it need to fulfill all the 613 commandments, it also needs to do the following. Check this out in source number 4. Text number 4. You should also realize that each individual must study all 4 of the Torah's layers, which are referred to by the acronym Pardes, orchard. These are Peshat, Remes, Drush, and Sod. Literal allusion, Drush is like expounding and mystical. It is necessary for a soul to be reincarnated repeatedly until it completes them all. Okay? So think about this. All of the 600,000 souls that were the original souls that were present, they were an offshoot of Adam, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the 12 tribes. All of those 600,000 souls experienced the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. They were charged with the mission to bring light into the world, to bring goodness and kindness into the world, to fulfill their mandate, which is the 613 commandments. And until they fulfill their goal, their destination, they need to be reincarnated again and again and again until they fulfill their unique mission. Now, each soul has its unique mission to fulfill. If this is not clear till now, it's going to become very clear soon in a moment. So think of, let's say, a corporation, everybody's working together. As Jews, we all work together. We all have to fulfill all the 613 commandments. Okay, let's just go back to the screen for a second. Okay, so now we get this history of the soul. There's Adam, there's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the 12 tribes, and then there's the 70 souls of Jacob's family, which eventually offshoots into 600,000 root souls. And you have this analogy of the tree on the right-hand side in front of you, that originally there's one tree and it kind of grows into many branches and many leaves, and every single one of the 600,000 comes from the original soul contained by Adam. What is the soul's mission? What is every single one of the 600,000 souls? To reveal God's presence, to fulfill all the 613 commandments, and to rectify and elevate both the body and the soul. That is our mission. That is our mandate. That is what we were commanded at the giving of the Torah at the mountain of Sinai. And reincarnation allows the soul to complete its mission, meaning like this. Let's say a person was alive at the times of the temple. The times of the temple, they were able to fulfill many, many commandments, which we're not able to do today. In one lifetime, it's kind of impossible to fulfill all 613 commandments. So that's why the soul has to be reincarnated again and again and again until it completes every single one of the 613 commandments. In fact, it could be that you come to this world just to do one of those 613 commandments, one mitzvah. That's what you came to this world for. And when you fulfill that one mitzvah, you now have completed the whole cycle of your whole soul from its previous lifetimes. All this, one more thing. The soul must study all 4 layers of Torah. Like we said, it's not just one layer of Torah, it's all 4 layers of the Torah, which is Pshat, the Remas, the Drush, and the Sod. So I'm just going to show a video here. And again, this is all an introduction to really understanding the concept behind this whole idea. But let me just make sure the sound is shared and I can play the video. Okay, check out this video right over here.
Human authors express themselves in their works, both directly and subtly, sometimes intentionally and always subconsciously. When we read a text, we can choose either to read the lines or to engage in more intricate analysis and read between the lines. The divine author of the Torah did something similar, but to an infinitely greater degree. God expressed himself in the text in multiple ways all at once, directly as well as subtly, with plenty of insinuation and a vast hidden layer of the divine subconscious. And he then instructed us to excavate it all. Jewish tradition separates these layers of understanding into 4 categories. The first is Pshat, direct intention, which is derived by examining context and syntax. For example, the Torah begins with the words, Bereshis bara Elokim, es hashemayim, ve'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On the plainest level of Torah understanding, this is a straightforward statement of what happened at the beginning of time. But the simple meaning is not always easy to clarify. Many biblical commentators, most notably Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the 11th century French scholar known universally as Rashi, devoted their efforts to clarifying the straightforward meaning of the often mysterious biblical texts. Our second layer of understanding is Remas, allusion. This refers to subtle communications that are encoded in the text. They can be uncovered using methods such as the numerical values of the Hebrew letters, the acronyms of words and phrases, or unusually sized letters in the Torah scroll. For example, the Torah's first 2 words, Bereshis bara, in the beginning, God created, carry the numerical value of 1116. That's the identical value of the phrase Barosh Hashanah Nivra. It was created on Rosh Hashanah. We are thereby informed that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of creation. Our third layer of understanding is drush, interpretive. Our sages extrapolate a vast corpus of ideas and instruction from the Torah's text through methods such as textual comparison, sequencing analysis, and homiletical interpretation. For example, from a sequencing perspective, the Torah begins with the wrong beginning. It describes creation, a narrative that is seemingly secondary to the Torah's primary function as a book of guidance that tells us how God expects us to act on a daily basis. The Torah should have dived directly into the nitty-gritty of the laws. On the interpretive level, however, the Torah first describes creation to tackle a major hurdle to Torah observance. The majority of Torah laws rely on the Jewish nation owning and settling the land of Israel. We were instructed to conquer the land and never relinquish our claim of ownership over it. But such a radical claim to a territory is bound to provoke opposition. Who gives us the right to take possession of a land and claim it as our eternal heritage? The Torah, therefore, begins with creation, clarifying that God is the creator of all territories, and he has the right to permanently bequeath a specific parcel to a particular people. It then records the history of God doing precisely that with the Jewish people. With this switch in sequence, the Torah supplies the Jews with the response God expects them to provide all who accuse them of land theft and occupation. The fourth layer of understanding is sod, hidden meaning. This refers to the deeply mystical messages that float behind every phrase and letter in the Torah. For example, the word Bereshis can be split perfectly into two words, bara, shis, meaning he created six. God first formed the six emotive divine attributes, from chesed, kindness, through yesod, attachment, as described in Jewish mysticism. God then used these six attributes to create the actual universe. So there you have a sampling of the four layers of understanding that can be found in the Torah's very first words. Beyond this, a vast ocean of knowledge is contained in these same words. And beyond that stretches the infinite vastness of wisdom contained in the rest of the Torah's close to 80,000 words.
I just want to tell a story in order to, to gain a little bit more understanding of what's going on over here. Once upon a time, there was a bachelor. He was 40 years old, and he couldn't find a shidduch. He couldn't find a soulmate. He was looking for a girl, and it's hard to find a girl and the right girl. So he came to the Arizal. The Arizal is the Kabbalist on this reincarnation business. His student, Rabbi Akiva, is a lot of the source texts that we're learning starting tonight. So he came to the Arizal and he asked him, give me a blessing to find my soulmate. So the Arizal told him, your soulmate, go to they were in Israel at the time, go to Alexandria in Egypt, go to a certain man, he has a daughter, that's your soulmate, go marry him. So he didn't say soulmate, he said, that's your shidduch, go marry him. So he went, he found the girl, fell in love, beautiful, married her. And as a dowry, the father, who was very, very wealthy, gave 150 coins as a dowry. So this new groom, 40-year-old bachelor, got 150,000 coins, and he got a beautiful woman. Everything's wonderful. But he actually lived an incredible life for 3 months. For 3 months, it was bliss. It was beautiful. It was amazing. After 3 months, his new bride, who was 20 years old at the time, he was 40, she was 20, his new bride died. The man was devastated. He came back to the Arizal in Israel. He says, what's going on? Like, you told me to marry this woman, you gave me a blessing. What's going on? So the Arizal told him like this. He said, 20 years ago, when you were 20 years old, you co-founded a bakery in Israel, in Tzfas, and your partner at the time gave you 3 months of grief when you founded this beautiful bakery. It was tough, 3 months of grief, but also he caused you to lose 150,000 coins. And you were devastated at the loss. You were devastated at the grief and the anxiety and the pain caused. And so when that person died, which was about 3 months after the whole story, he died, he went to heaven. and he had to be reincarnated. He was reincarnated into that girl. And you had to wait 20 years for her to be able to marry you. And once she married you, she brought into the marriage 150,000 coins, which she had owed you from the previous lifetime, her previous lifetime, right? When you had lost 150,000 coins. So that's why her father gave it to you. And not only that, so 3 months now of grief that she had caused you when she was your partner in the previous lifetime, now she caused you 3 months of such bliss and such beauty and purity. And she now was able to elevate her, rectify her soul's mistake in the previous lifetime. And she went now to the Garden of Eden, to paradise. And as for you, because you harbored such resentment against your partner, because had you forgiven your partner, you wouldn't have had to wait so long for your ultimate partner. But go now and you'll find your ultimate partner, your real soulmate, and he married and he had a beautiful life. So very often we live our lives, and the people we meet are actually people who've been here before. We've had encounters with them in the previous lifetime. And like I said, the 600,000 souls, which we are all offshoots of, as I'll explain more of that in a minute, we all have to fulfill all the 613 commandments. And until we fulfill all the 613 commandments, we're going to have to be reincarnated again and again and again. But not only that, as you just watched in the video, the Torah has 4 layers, Pshat, Remas, the Drush, and the Sod. And each of these levels, you have to fulfill the Torah according to the interpretation of those 4 levels. Each soul has a unique understanding and it's a unique connection. Some souls are more to the simple level, some more to the deeper level, but each soul has to come back and do this. And that is why we make a prayer every single morning. Second, I'll pull this up. Sorry. And we actually make a prayer right over here in verse number 5, every single morning in our prayers. You hear it on, may it be your will, our God and God of our fathers, that the holy temple be rebuilt speedily in our days. And here's the key word, and grant us our portion in your Torah. We make actual statement and we ask God, yes, we want the holy temple to be rebuilt, but what does it mean we grant our portion in God's Torah? So every single one of us has a specific portion that we need to fulfill in the Torah. As it says right over here, look at text number 5b, as explained in numerous sources, the soul of each Jew has a specific segment of the Torah with which it is particularly associated. This explains the phrasing of our sage's statement, grant us our portion in your Torah. Our portion implies that each of us has a unique portion within the Torah. This concept is further expressed in our sage's statement that there are novel concepts that an accomplished student of the Torah is destined to introduce. In other words, the entire universe anticipates the birth of this particular diligent student, awaiting the moment that the student innovates, meaning uncovers this specific concept within the Torah. For this concept is this student's portion in the Torah. So to sum up so far, in order, look at the figure in front of you, in order to fulfill its mission and gain rectification, each of the 600,000 root souls must, number 1, fulfill all the 613 commandments, study the Torah using all 4 different ways of interpretation, and reveal its own unique part of the Torah. Now we get to the understanding of it. Okay, till now it may have been a little bit blurry, but I think from now on is where we literally understand the concept of reincarnation. But I just want to show you first the screenshot. 1 second. The PowerPoint. Okay, so this is what we explained before on the video, that Pshat, Remas, Drush, so simple explanations, hints and illusions, expounding, and esoteric explanation. We went through it at length. Okay, and we explained that each soul must uncover its unique portion in the Torah. Okay. And again, complete all the 613 commandments, study all 4 layers of the Torah, reveal its unique portion in the Torah. That's the mission of every single soul. Now,
Rabbi?
Yes.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
So our goal is to fulfill the 613 commandments. There are some commandments that we cannot fulfill because there's no temple today. Does that mean that we're going to reincarnate over and over again?
So your soul and my soul and everybody else's soul here, so we don't live in the times of the temple, but we did live in the times of the temple where we were able to fulfill those commandments. And I don't know, can't tell you for sure, but the idea is that yes, when the temple was around, we fulfilled those commandments that were associated with the temple. But the reason why we were reincarnated is because there's certain things we still need to do and fulfill in this world. That's why we are still here. By the way, there's another thing like a Cohen and Levi, for example. Certain mitzvot can only be performed by a Cohen. But a certain mitzvot can only be performed by a Cohen. So how does that work? In the next source, we will see this. I'm going to answer one more question. I see there's a question here. I'll ask another question. In this context, how does one know their mission? Or how does one tune into what their mission may be? Very good question. This will become obvious by the end of the lesson. And it's in one of the texts at the end of the lesson, so you will see it. How do you know what your mission is? We're going to see this very soon. Okay. The key to understanding this entire lesson is right here in front of you. Okay, I believe this is the key to reincarnation, the key to understanding everything we've discussed till now. Here it is in text number 6. So again, we said before that the way this works is, think of it, by the way, even in physics, with DNA, right? Everything comes from one cell, and then that cell comes from, it goes and multiplies into more cells and more cells and more cells. So the soul itself, Adam, as we learned, had one original soul, which contained all the souls of future generations. It was like a master soul, which he gave over to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then that soul split into 12 by the 12 tribes. And that 12 split into 70 when the Jews arrived in Egypt. And by the end of Egypt, when they would be granted the giving of the Torah, was split into 600,000. Let's look at text number 6 carefully. Although we stated in numerous passages, again, this is from Rabbi Akiva, who was a student of Arizal, that a specific individual soul was reincarnated in a particular person, and it was subsequently reincarnated in another specific individual, and so on. Do not misread this as implying that the original soul itself is reincarnated repeatedly. Rather, each human soul branches out into innumerable roots. Every root contains an infinite quantity of soul sparks. Each subsequent reincarnation, a number of these sparks are rectified, and they ascend to enjoy the rewards of heaven and dwell in the particular strata of Gan Eden that are appropriate for them. However, those soul sparks that were not rectified are reincarnated to provide further opportunity for rectification. Let me explain what this means. Okay. So think of the soul as a tree. Think of it as a tree. Think of each tree has like a stem, right? So imagine you have a stem over here, and this soul lived in Mr. X 100 years ago, and now it needs to be reincarnated. So what happens is, think of it as if it's grafted, as if it's created from this DNA, from this soul. A new soul, so to speak, is now going, it's an offshoot of the original soul. And now this offshoot is now going into a new body. And now it's going to fulfill the mission that the previous root, so to speak, did not fulfill. Okay? So each of the 600,000 root souls are now multiplying and grafting, right, like a tree, into new souls and new souls and new souls. But really, it's all, in other words, you can have a nucleus of 20, 30, 1,000, 2,000 souls, which is a nucleus of only one of those 600,000. It's probably closer to tens of thousands, which are all it belong to one nucleus, one family of one of those 600,000 souls, so to speak. Okay, so what happens is when Mr. X or Mrs. X passed away 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, so if they fulfilled the mission, that's great. That part of the soul goes straight to paradise, or like we learned last week, it goes to hell in order to be cleansed. It goes, and then it can go to Gan Eden, no problem. But if the soul didn't fulfill its mission and it still's got the 613 commandments to fulfill, it needs to be grafted, so to speak, into another offshoot, into another soul, and it goes into another person. So what happens is, if you look, let's say, Tzvi, it's like I see you, so I'm saying Tzvi. So if you look at Tzvi, for example, so Tzvi is his own unique identity. Natalie is her own unique identity. You're not a new you're not this person that kind of belongs to Mrs. X from years ago. No, you are your own unique personality and person. You see, when we talk about reincarnation, one of the turn-offs, so to speak, is like, oh, I'm not my own person. I don't have my unique personality. Like, what, do I really belong to somebody else from 100 years ago? No, I want to be my own person. You are your own person. That's how reincarnation works. Okay. So does everyone understand this? This has to be clear in order to move on. I mean, obviously it's not clear because we don't know what souls are, right? It's hard to imagine what it is. Like, it's not like you could see geography 1 + 1 = 2, right? You have to trust me that there's a soul, and you have to trust the soul's grafted. But this is the way Kabbalah explains that it's grafted. That concept is grafted, created. A new soul has to be like, in order to fulfill its mission. It regenerates. How's that for a nice word? Regenerates into another thing. So let's look back over here now into this text over here. So you have what's called rectified sparks, and you have what's called unrectified sparks. So rectified sparks, mitzvot that were, it's not clear here, to Gan Eden properly observed. It means that when a person did the mitzvot properly, so they ascend to Gan Eden. And unrectified sparks, again, it's not clear in front of me, but I get the message, right? Is if a person did not do the mitzvot, it's unrectified sparks, so they need to be reincarnated if they need to fulfill their mission, if they haven't fulfilled their mission properly. Now we get to something which is a topic that so many people find fascinating, which is called Ibur. Partial reincarnation, non-human reincarnation. How does this work exactly? So there's a concept called partial reincarnation. It's called the Ibur. Again, for those who are familiar with the Kabbalistic terminology of Dibuk, we're not going to get into Dibuk tonight. We're talking about Ibur. Ibur and Neshama is a concept which is called soul impregnation. The soul becomes pregnant, so to speak, with another soul. Okay, so I know the screen's in front of you here, but let me just show you a better text right over here. Okay, soul impregnation. The concept of Gilgul, look at the source in front of you, reincarnation, is that a soul requiring further rectification enters the body of a child as it emerges from its mother's womb to serve as a newborn soul, right? That's the concept we learned till now. That's the classic understanding of reincarnation, right? My soul didn't fulfill it, so an offshoot, again, it's an offshoot, a new offshoot of the soul has to go now into reincarnation. It has no permission to leave that individual until the person's destined day of death. By contrast, the concept of Ibur, soul impregnation, is that a soul enters an adult body that is already inhabited by a soul. The person's primary soul received at birth. In this case, the individual is merely impregnated with a guest soul in addition to harboring a primary soul. The individual then carries the extra soul, much as a woman carries a child in her womb. So let's take as an example, let's say Alex, right? Alex is an amazing guy. I love him with all my heart and soul. Great guy. And he's living and he has his soul, and his soul has a mission since the time it was born, right? The soul, Alex's soul, every soul today, by the way, is not a new soul. There's the Rebbe was a brand new soul, but other than that, nobody's a new soul. So Alex was a great guy living in the previous lifetime, but like me and you and everybody else, Alex had to be reincarnated, and an offshoot was grafted, and he's living a wonderful life. Now, it could be that Alex's soul is now going to have a guest. There's going to be a soul from a previous lifetime of somebody else who now is going to attach itself to Alex's soul in order, we'll see in a second why, but there could be two possible reasons why it needs to be as a guest soul as somebody else. We'll see that in a moment, but it's now going to live, doesn't have to live its whole life, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 50 years, who knows how long. It lives in this host, so to speak, in order to fix up whatever it is, and I'll explain why in a minute. But that's the concept of Ibur. Ibur is not, it's not reincarnation from birth, but it's a guest soul. And we'll see now the purpose of this Ibur. Let me share the screen in front of you so you can see it, what the purpose is. Okay, text number 7b. Again, all these sources are from Rabbi Chaim Vital, which is the student of the Arizal. So he says like this. A soul experiences Ibur for one of two reasons. Number one, The impregnated soul comes to an individual for its own sake. In its previous life, it failed to perform a particular mitzvah and was therefore left lacking. This was a kind of mitzvah that was impossible to perform under the conditions of that lifetime, such as the mitzvah of yibum, chalitza, and the like. Let me just explain what yibum and chalitza is. So, for example, if you have Jack married to Sarah, and Jack dies, God forbid, without having any children, so Jack's brother has a mitzvah to do yibum, meaning Jack's brother now has a mitzvah to marry his brother's wife in order to have children with her. So the mitzvah of yibum doesn't apply to everybody. It only applies to somebody who has a brother who died without children, and you can marry his wife. Or chalitza is if he doesn't want to marry her, you do the mitzvah of chalitza. So there's certain, and by the way, there's a lot of mitzvot associated with only specific times. It can't be performed at all times. So let's say there was, and this is one of the 613 commandments. And like I said before, that a soul has to fulfill all the 613 commandments. So if you had an impossibility to perform a certain mitzvah, it is therefore not obligated to engage in a full-scale incarnation described earlier in this chapter. For soul impregnation is sufficient. So now it comes into the body of somebody who is going to do the mitzvah of yibum, or who is going to do the mitzvah of chalitza, or for example, who is a Cohen and can do a specific mitzvah associated with being a priest. So now that soul can be a guest by that new person, and until such time as that new person has fulfilled the mitzvah, it needs to live there. But once that mitzvah has been done, it can go now and find its eternal rest. Second reason is the impregnated soul comes solely to assist an individual, to bring a person additional merit, or to guide an individual in matters of Torah and mitzvot. In this case, the impregnated soul lacks nothing for itself. It's just coming to guide the person, to help the person along in his or her path that it needs to do. So here you have, so far what we discussed on the left-hand side. We didn't do the right-hand side yet. The left-hand side is partial reincarnation. In other words, we discussed at the beginning of the class what it means total reincarnation and why it has to happen. But there's a concept of partial reincarnation, which means a temporary guest soul. And why does it come? Number one, for the guest soul's sake, right? So the person who died doesn't have to be fully reincarnated, but it just has to come for one mitzvah, for two mitzvahs, which it can't do in a regular body, so it comes to this body. Or to assist the host soul. The host soul needs extra merits. It's not doing so well. Maybe it has a very strong challenges or something, so it needs extra merit. So this now comes as extra help to help it defeat the bad, so to speak, inside of it. Okay, so far so clear. Again, anybody has any questions, just stop in the middle or just chat on the chat box, and I'm checking it all the time to answer your questions. Okay. To complete this concept of understanding, we need to understand this right in front of you, which is the right-hand side, non-human reincarnation. What does that mean? So to understand this, let's just go to the actual source. Okay. The actual source in front of you. Okay, you should see it in front of you, text number 8. So in order to understand if a soul can come to a non-human form, we first have to understand how many times can a soul be reincarnated. Once we understand how many times a soul can be reincarnated, then we can understand if it can come to a non-human form. So in text number 8 says like this: when a human soul comes to the world and becomes soiled by sin in the process, it reincarnates in another body to rectify itself. That second life is its first reincarnation. And remember, it's called grafted, right? Being created, it's a new and unique identity. That second life is its first reincarnation. If it fails to rectify itself during that lifetime, it may return in a second reincarnation. If it again fails to find rectification, it may do a third reincarnation. But after that, however, it is no longer provided opportunities for rectification via reincarnation. What happens to it? So text number 9. Behold, God does all these twice or thrice with man. The limitation of twice or thrice applies with man, meaning that a human soul is not subsequently reincarnated in a human body. Rather, it is forced to wander the planet until it is reincarnated in an inanimate vegetable or animal entity. Then, after it has done its penance, there is hope for its future, for God's endless mercies extend to all his creations. Let me explain. growing up in South Africa, I think most of you know me, I love dogs. I used to, we had all kinds of dogs, from Maltese poodles, and then when my mother was attacked, we had these massive German Shepherds and an English Mastiff. So these three dogs, I used to love them. Ringo, Jessie were the German Shepherds, and Misty was this humongous English Mastiff, and I kid you not, nobody attacked my mother after we had these dogs. They were trained killers. Ringo, especially, every Shabbat afternoon, he used to sit by the window with his mouth in the window, listening to our family singing nigunim, singing the songs, the Shabbat songs. And his ears would perk. And this guy loved Cholent. He loved Ringo. He was, and I used to say he was a tzaddik. He was a righteous man in his previous lifetime. He was a good guy. And for some reason, which I'll explain in a moment, it could be that he was reincarnated into this German Shepherd, but he was such a good guy. I got to tell you, I loved him. I loved the guy. He slept in my room for some time, but he loved those Shabbat songs and the Cholent. The Cholent he loved more than a steak, more than bones. The guy was consumed with Cholent. So now, here's how this works. Here's how this works. When a person fails in his or her mission once, twice, three times, they now have to be reincarnated either in an animal or in a vegetable or something else. And it's like a prison for them. It's a prison for them because the soul senses and sees its capacity. It sees what it did in the previous lifetime, but it cannot express itself. It's like a person in prison. He knows there's a world out there, but he's shackled, right? He's in prison. He's in jail. So he can't fulfill his or her expression. He can't express himself or herself. He can't do anything. So he's trapped. But the soul senses and feels and knows everything. In fact, in the case of Ringo, for example, it says the soul or dog can see things like shadim, for example, which are demons. It can see angels. Sometimes Ringo would just bark and bark and bark, and I would like, look, there's nothing there. But it could be the animal sees, especially if it's got a soul, it sees things that we cannot see in any way, shape, or form. But it's a punishment for the soul. I see a question of you to answer it. Do we only reincarnate in Jews, or can we reincarnate in non-Jews as well? And the answer is we can reincarnate in non-Jews as well. Yes. So it's a real punishment for the soul. And after the soul has been punished, so to speak, for 20, 30 years, whatever amount is in that animal or the plant or whatever, it can now finally go to its eternal resting place. So it's a form of cleansing it. It's a form of, you tried once, you tried twice, you tried three times, and it didn't work. Now let's try this. Okay, so this is what you have in the screen in front of you on the right-hand side. Non-human reincarnation after 3 unsuccessful reincarnations, and it's a form of punishment. Okay, so like I said, it cannot express itself. It's restricted. When it's reincarnated in non-human form, the idea is the soul is acutely aware of who it was and what it did wrong, and it knows what its capabilities as a human being is. But it's like, I would love to speak, I would love to say something, I can't, I'm trapped. I see something wrong, I want to speak, I can't. It's a punishment for what you did in the previous lifetime. But that suffering enables it to have rectification, as we learned, because the long process, the long thing is that we want the soul to rectify itself and find its eternal, everlasting rest in heaven. Okay. So look at the screen in front of me. It is impossible to deduce or intuit whether one possesses a reincarnated soul or not. Again, all our souls today, every single one of us has been reincarnated multiple times. But who we are and what our mission is, we'll see in a moment. Just one second. Okay. I have to follow instructions here, but the video first or not? Okay, I think it's this text number 10 first, before the video. Okay, text number 10. It is impossible to deduce whether one possesses a reincarnated soul or not, unless one is the recipient of a mystical communication in this regard. So we don't know. I mean, again, we assume all of us, we know this from Kabbalah, that everybody is not a new soul, but we don't know. We don't know. So you may wonder, and this was a question somebody asked in the beginning, I forgot who, how then will we know the purpose for which we enter this world? Which mitzvah we must scrupulously perform, or which transgression we must especially avoid, right? We said that we are reincarnated. Most of us fulfilled already the mitzvot, during our previous lifetime. So what's the mitzvah we need to do? The answers are naturally ingrained in us. We experience natural affinity and longing to perform a certain mitzvah. And when that mitzvah is critical for our present incarnation, or our inclination strives especially hard to entice us to commit a particular sin, for it is the very same sin in which we blundered during our previous life. I'm going to explain this at length now. I'm going to explain this, but first I want to just show you a video. I think I should have showed the video before, but let me just show you this video. Right up here. Just make sure I'm sharing the sound. Sharing the sound.
Today's reflection is going to help us try to relate to the idea that our souls came to the world this time around for a special purpose. A mitzvah, a good act that has special value in this lifetime. Now, how can we know such a thing? To a great extent, we can't. However, there's a way that we can catch a glimpse into what is important for the soul in this lifetime. And that is by way of a metaphor which we will now visualize. Picture in your mind's eye, you are leading an army out to battle. If the militaristic imagery is not to your liking, you can imagine a game of chess. The same idea applies. You're leading your army out to battle, and you begin to become aware that your opponent, your enemy, is focused on striking you in one particular spot. Now, it hadn't occurred to you that this spot has importance, but from the fact that the enemy keeps focusing on it, keeps going after it, we begin to realize that it must have strategic importance to the enemy. As you're imagining this, shift now and think about your life and think about a mitzvah or a good deed that is inordinately difficult for you. And by inordinately, what I mean is this. We all have mitzvahs that are harder and easier for all of us. But then there are mitzvahs that by all rights should be easy. It shouldn't be so challenging, and for some inexplicable reason, we just keep having resistance in that area. Why are we having inexplicably more resistance in that area? Why? Because it has that much more strategic importance, and therefore all things in the universe being counterbalanced, our Maker has allowed a special resistance, a special challenge to give us pushback in that one area that we most need to overcome. So imagine, connect to yourself, think of yourself, think of that area, that mitzvah that's the hardest for you, the one that keeps on challenging you. And now imagine it, rather than as something that you're frustrated about, imagine it as your most precious asset. So precious that the enemy is specifically focusing on it. Let's take a moment to try to think of that mitzvah that is the most difficult, and to now see it as that mitzvah which in this lifetime is apparently the most important and most impactful. We'll take a moment now to envision this, to connect to this feeling. Feel yourself being empowered, knowing that this mitzvah has so much power, so much influence, and that is where the resistance is coming from.
Okay, so that was that video there. I just saw some questions here. Hold on. Is every animal a reincarnation from a human, or animals mostly reincarnation from animals? So I would say most animals are actually not reincarnations from human. Some animals are, and the animal is an animal. Just it may have a soul, which is a prisoner inside it, so to speak. Okay, and then I have, so all humans come from the 600,000 souls? Yes, we all come from the 600,000 souls. If not, what differentiates a non-Jewish soul from a Jewish soul? So non-Jews have the concept of reincarnation as well. I don't want to get into the differences and the specifics now because we won't have the time. I can discuss it afterwards. But for now, what we're talking about mostly is for a Jewish soul, but non-Jewish soul also has a similar concept, similar idea. So just to give you examples from Tanakh, okay, from Jewish history. So let's take the first murder in history, the first crime, so to speak, which I guess needed atonement. The first crime which we read about in the Bible is Kain and Hevel, right? The two brothers, which Kain went and killed Hevel. Now, why did Kain kill Hevel? So we know that Kain was born with a twin sister, and Hevel was born with two sisters. Hevel was the first triplets. I know Chevy and I have triplets, but the first triplets in history was Hevel. Hevel was born with two twin sisters, and which he was supposed to marry, both of them, right? And Kain was supposed to marry his twin sister, but Kain, one of the things he was jealous about was that he didn't have a twin sister, triplet. He only had a twin to marry. So he killed his brother for an extra sister. Another thing is a kind of farmer. I'm not going to get to that now. But Kain's soul now needs rectification, right? Needs to be reincarnated. We just said somebody who didn't fulfill the mitzvot, especially somebody who committed a crime such as murder, which is one of the 10 commandments, transgressions that, he has to fix up this mistake. So Kain and Hevel had to be reincarnated. Kain was reincarnated into a man by the name of Yitro. Yitro was Moses' father-in-law. Yitro had 7 names. One of those names was Kaini. Kaini, Kain, Kaini. Yitro, Jethro, was Kain. He was Kain. Now, Hevel was reincarnated as well into a man called Moses. Moses was Hevel. Now remember, Kain killed Hevel over an additional triplet that Hevel was supposed to marry. So that triplet girl, who was she reincarnated into? Sipporah, Moses' wife. So here's how Kain fixed his mistake. First of all, Kain, now he is Yitro. First of all, when Moses was running away from Pharaoh, so he gave him refuge, he gave him food, he saved his life, basically. He was on the run from Pharaoh. So, right, instead of killing him like he did in the previous lifetime, he now saved his life. That's number one. But number two, Kain, Yitro, now gave the extra triplet that they fought over, in which he killed him because of it in the previous lifetime. He now gave that triplet, his daughter, Sipporah, as a wife to Moses. In other words, he says, yeah, that was your wife. So now he was able to rectify and fix up that mistake by giving Sipporah to Moses. By the way, Sipporah, by the Jewish people splitting of the sea, by the going out of Egypt, she was in Midian. She wasn't present, so her soul had to go and be fixed again. So it was reincarnated into a woman called Devorah. Devorah, the prophetess. Devorah, the prophetess, the one who Barak, Sisra, and that whole story. So she was able to rectify the fact that she wasn't present at the Song of the Sea. She made up her own song, which is called Shirat Dvorah. For continuing to answer this question, what is a soul? Is a package of energy and consciousness? Can souls exist without consciousness? Is there life without a soul? Wow, a lot of questions. Is there life without a soul? On the opposite end, we know the soul exists without afterlife. Okay, so what is the soul? The answer to this question is I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. What is it exactly? How do we define it? I don't know because we can't see it. We don't know what it is. We do know the following. We know that, for example, I write Uriel Vigla. Who's Uriel Vigla? Who am I? Am I my nose? Am I my eyes? Am I my ears? Who am I? after, God forbid, somebody dies and passes away, so you see that his hands are there, his legs are there, his body's there, his hair is there, but he's dead. What changed? I see all his limbs, all his 248 and 365 limbs, I see everything there, but he's dead. What changed? His soul is no longer present. That is the soul. The soul is that concept, that idea that you're searching for when a person dies. That's what it is. So to answer, is a package of energy and consciousness? I don't know. Can souls deal with that consciousness? It's a spiritual thing. It's part of God. We know that. It's part of Hashem. It's an neshama elokis, part of God, which exists forever, by the way. Just like God exists forever, this thing exists forever. But just to show you again, like another idea, we read in the Haggadah of Pesach about Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He became the head of the Sanhedrin at the age of 18 years old. And in the Haggadah, which we're going to read in a couple of weeks, we say, Harei ani keven shivim shana. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was appointed the head of the Jews. He said, I am like 70 years old. Why was he like 70 years old? Because he was a reincarnation of Shmuel Hanavi, Shmuel the prophet, who lived till 52 years old. So his 18 years plus Shmuel Hanavi's 52 years equals 70. So he kind of said, I'm like 70 years old. By the way, another famous person is, there was a guy called Rabbi Yochanan Cohen Gadol, who was a high priest at Tzaddik until the age of 80. And at the age of 80, he became a heretic. And he denounced everything about Judaism, everything. He was reincarnated into a person called Rabbi Eliezer ben Gurdaya, who was a massive, massive sinner. The Talmud says every single sin in the entire Bible he did. But at the end of his life, with the whole story with the prostitute that he met, he did tshuva, he repented, thereby rectifying not only this sin, but his previous lifetime of Rabbi Yochanan Kohen Gadol as well. I'm not going to get into all the sources, but like, for example, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was a famous Gilgul reincarnation, according to the Kabbalah, of a man called Zimri. Remember Zimri? Zimri was a person who publicly sinned, committed with Cosbi Vast Sur, the daughter of Midian. So they had 24,000 Jews who committed the crime of slept with the Midianite woman. So what happened is Rabbi Akiva, who was now Zimri, his 24,000 students who died between Sfirat Omer were reincarnations of those 24,000 people from the tribe of Shimon who had to be living again to rectify the sin that they did. When they died, they rectified the sin that they had in the previous lifetime when they sinned with the Midianite woman. But by the way, that story of Zimri, Cosby was actually a Gilgul and was reincarnated into a woman called Izebel, who was the wife of Achav, who persecuted Eliyahu Hanavi, whatever, without getting into all that. But just last story about reincarnation, there's Rabbi Avraham Heschel Yeshua of the Aptarov. He was a massive lover of Jews. He loved Jews. So on Yom Kippur in our prayers, when it says, V'kach haya omer, we would say, this is what the high priest used to say. So he used to say, V'kach hayiti omer, this is what I used to say. He said, in my previous lifetimes, I know who I was. I was a Kohen Gadol. I was a Nasi. I was the head of the Jews. I was this. I was a king. I was a Reish Galuta. But I never fulfilled the mitzvah of loving a fellow Jew to the utmost. And that's why when he was reincarnated into the Aptarov, he was a person who loved fellow Jews to the utmost extent. So getting back to the video we saw, which is what we learned, is what is our mission? How do we know what our mission is? So I have to tell the story. It's a famous story. There was once a wealthy man who hired a Bal Hagola. A Bal Hagola is a wagon driver to take him somewhere. So we have a Jew who's wealthy and we have a Jew who's poor man, but a wagon driver. And they went to a certain town. And when they got to the town, the traveling businessman decided to check into his hotel, right, early. So, I'm sorry, the coachman decided to check into shul early, and the businessman, he went to the mikveh, whatever. Anyways, on the way to the business, the wealthy guy, he hears screams coming from like the village street, and he goes, Erev Shabbat, he goes to hear these screams, and he sees there's a wagon stuck in the mud. So he has no experience with wagons, he has no idea, but he knows Jews need help. So he decides to try and help them. But he's a wealthy businessman, he knows how to trade in stocks, or he knows how to make money, but he has no idea how to fix a wheel and how to extricate Jews from. So he got himself all muddy and sweaty and wet, and with his effort and a few other people, he made it 5 minutes before Shabbat. He made it to the shul, but he wasn't able to shower and he wasn't able to get dressed for Shabbat. That was his experience. Meantime, the poor coachman had gone to the synagogue early, and there was a lot of poor people there who would love to dine somewhere, to eat somewhere Friday night. So this poor man couldn't believe his luck. He invited all the 10 paupers to come to his meal. The problem is his meal consisted of a very meager quantity to begin with, because he was poor, so he didn't have enough food to begin with. So when these souls passed away, they were told by the heavenly court that they had mismatched their mission. They had confused their mission. The rich man, his mission was to invite those poor people because he had a lavish feast to last for everybody. And by him going to the coachman's job, he had confused his mission and his soul's reason for living. On the other hand, the coachman, what he should have done is help the coach people, help that coach stuck in the mud. So they had missed their missions and they had to be reincarnated again to fulfill their mission in life. How do we know what my mission is? So like you saw in the video meditation, the thing that's hardest for you normally, that is your mission. When you find something that is so difficult, that is so hard for me to do, I don't know how to do it, it's so hard, that's your mission. Somebody once wrote a letter to the Rebbe complaining about his wife. Ah, my wife. Oh, yeah, my wife, it's so difficult. I don't know how to handle her. I want to divorce her. Look at the Rebbe's words. The Rebbe's words. You have to see it in the Rebbe's own words. Look what the Rebbe wrote to him. Text number 11. This is straight from the Rebbe. This is written recently, in the last 50 years. I am replying to your letter in which you inform me that you accepted and are implementing my directives regarding Torah study classes, giving charity. That's great. Studying Torah is great. Giving charity is great. But as far as the situation at home with your spouse is concerned, your marital harmony appears only superficially to have improved, while the underlying reality remains unsatisfactory. I already told you in my previous letters, right? This is obviously an ongoing thing, that it would be challenging. You are meant to find it difficult, for the success of your life's mission hinges upon your sincere efforts towards marital harmony. Obviously, this person, the Rebbe is telling him, for some reason, in your previous lifetime, I don't know why, but you have to fulfill the mitzvah of Shalom Bayit. You have to be tested with Shalom Bayit. Your mission is to be nice to your wife. Can you imagine? Your mission is make your wife coffee every morning. Your mission is go to your wife, serve her breakfast in bed. Make your wife's life beautiful. And the fact that you find it hard means that's your mission. Our mystical teaching revealed that rare individuals are born with original souls. The rest of us are reincarnations. That's what we learned today. We return to complete the fulfillment of the mitzvot that we missed in previous lifetimes. Certainly, we are obligated in all of the mitzvot in every lifetime, but the specific mitzvot we omitted in early incarnations are critical to the rectification of our souls and the rectification of this world. Using the evil inclination as a guide, we can identify the mitzvot that determine the outcome of our life's mission. Our inclination opposes the mitzvot that we finalized in previous lifetimes, but only to the degree necessary to create free choice between good and evil. By contrast, it unleashes a fierce storm of opposition with countless hurdles and challenges when we approach a mitzvah that we failed to fulfill in previous incarnations. So this person, for example, that mitzvah was he wasn't nice to his wife in the previous lifetime, and therefore he was reincarnated to be nice to her. Therefore, your many hurdles in marital harmony reveal its indispensability to your rectification. Do whatever it takes to achieve harmony. By the way, I hope this guy listens to the Rebbe's advice. I really hope so, because his whole mission, his whole reason that he was reincarnated. Think about it. His soul could have gone to paradise and enjoyed divine bliss, and like we learned last week, that a person can live 70, 80, 90 years in this world and enjoy everything. It doesn't equal one moment of pleasure in the world to come. But the reason why he had to be reincarnated was to be nice to his wife, because he failed with that in the previous lifetime. One of the mitzvot in the Torah is to be nice to your spouse. So therefore he had to be to come down to this world to. Now the Rebbe told him this, right? Normally we ask people, we don't know what our mission is. But if you find something challenging, you should know that that's most likely the thing you need to focus on the most. Okay, any questions? Again, just feel free to stop me in the middle. Otherwise, I just want to show you the PowerPoint here a second. Okay. So identify your personal mission. How do you do that? Our strengths and our passions, our weaknesses and our struggles, our circumstances, all these are hints and clues to understanding what our mission is. Okay, 1 second, that's not yet. So we go back here. Okay. Text number 12. From the moment that God instructed our forefather Abraham, go from your land, following which it stated, Abraham kept traveling further southward. The mystical process of the rectification of divine sparks was launched. When God told Abraham in the beginning of the first Jew, the first mitzvah told to the first Jew, go out from your land, this was the idea of rectifying divine sparks. Subsequently, by decree of divine providence, individuals travel to locations in which divine sparks, these specific individuals must rectify, await their redemption. So for example, when I got married, Chevy and I were willing to travel anywhere in the world. In fact, I thought I would end up in Johannesburg or London, where Chevy's from. I thought that that's where my shlichut, my primary mission would be. And I ended up looking into literally any corner of the globe. I was looking into Lehigh Acres in Florida, Southwest Florida, to open a Chabad house. I was looking into the last place I didn't even know what Park Avenue or Fifth Avenue was. I didn't know what it was. It's somehow God led me into going and living in the Upper East Side. Why is that? Because obviously my soul's mission has to do something in the Upper East Side. Now, if you find yourself in Miami or Israel or for wherever it is, or because of COVID, I don't know where you are, but where you are is where you are meant to be. And I wouldn't change that necessarily, because where you are, obviously, that is where your soul's mission needs to be done. In other words, the example of being nice to your spouse, yeah, that's great. That you could probably do anyway. But the fact that you live somewhere, let's say it's the Upper East Side for myself, means there's certain sparks that my soul needs to rectify that are in the Upper East Side. The fact that COVID sent you to Miami or to Israel or to Westchester means it wasn't COVID that sent you. COVID was just an excuse that God used to send you to Westchester or to Roslyn. Because Roslyn, you have sparks that need to be elevated there, because that's your mission. So continue the source. Saintly individuals, right, righteous people with spiritual vision perceive the locations in which their divine sparks await their engagement, and they take the initiative to journey to those locations. But the rest of us, we in the dark, are left in the hands of the primary cause behind all causes and the ultimate reasons behind all reasons. God orchestrates countless apparent causes and circumstances to bring specific individuals to the locations in which their predestined service of rectification is required. By the way, if your business is a lawyer or a doctor, or you are in the construction business, obviously there's sparks in the construction business that your soul needs to be elevated. Maybe you were a builder in the previous lifetimes and you didn't build properly. I don't know. And now you need to build properly. And if you look at the figure 5.2 in front of you, here's some strong clues by which to identify your mission. Again, you look at your weaknesses, struggles, your circumstances, and your strengths and passions, as we learned till now. Okay. I want to just get back. Remember when we started the class? I want to just show this to you. Hold on a second. I'm just going back because we said this is what we're going to be discussing. Right? Remember the true or false, which we started the class. Now we can answer the entire true or false situation. So let's look at this. True or false, right? Belief in reincarnation is basic to Judaism. We now can answer this question very easily. Of course, it's basic to Judaism. Reincarnation is something which we say in the Shema every single night. It's very, very basic. Number two, true or false? In the Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another. So this is a tricky question. If you answer true or you answer false, you're probably like a good Jew correct. Part of the soul that once inhabited one body now returns. Remember, we learned that it's grafted, it's spun off into a new soul with a unique personality and identity. So yes, it goes into another body, but remember, it's like a tree which has roots, stems, DNA replicated. So it's now into another body unique to that person. Number three, the human soul can be reincarnated in a non-human entity such as an animal or plant. Yes, that is correct. As we have seen, it's concept of ibur, it's concept of punishment for that soul that needs partial reincarnation. Number four, a reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone who lived in a previous lifetime. So this is totally false, because the new spun off, so to speak, spark has its unique identity and personality. It's related to the previous incarnations, like it's the same kind of family of that one of the 600,000 souls, but it's got its unique identity. Number 5, the purpose of doing good in one's current lifetime is to be reincarnated as a person of higher status. This is totally not true. Totally false. It's nothing to do with status, nothing to do with that at all. Number 6, the soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins committed in a previous life. I don't think the word penalty is accurate. It's more rehabilitation, I think would be more accurate. It's reincarnated as a rehabilitation for sins committed in a previous lifetime. Most souls today are reincarnated. That is correct. That is true. Okay, so again, if anybody has any questions, put them on the chat or ask them. Put back over here. I think this is the final source. 1 second. We're nearly done. Okay, so we learned today about the reincarnation. I hope you've learned a lot. What does this mean, right? What does this mean? So we now understand that we all have a mission. Our mission is to bring Mashiach. What does it mean, Mashiach? To spread goodness and kindness in the world. Our mission is to complete the 613 mitzvot. We are here for a mission, for a higher purpose than ourselves. It's not that we get to do something, to accomplish something. And we learned that what we accomplish is greater than ourselves, and it's a unique mission. So what this does is, Viktor Frankl said, mental health requires a will to meaning. Thus it can be seen. The mental health is based on a certain degree of tension. The tension between what one has already achieved and what one still ought to accomplish, or the gap between what one is and what one should become. Such a tension is inherent in the human being and therefore is indispensable to mental well-being. We should not then be hesitant about challenging man with potential meaning for him to fulfill. It is only thus that we evoke his will to meaning from its state of latency. Meaning, reincarnation kind of is God's master plan. You know, we talk about loved ones, for example, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. So, for example, my grandmother, her name was Batya. She passed away on the 17th day of Adar. My firstborn daughter, her name is Batya Razel. Is my daughter Batya Razel a reincarnation, a spark of her grandmother that she says shares the same name as she's named after? Not necessarily at all. Could it be? Maybe. I don't know. We don't know. But could there be a connection? Yes. In other words, when you see somebody who has the same personality, same characteristics as his great-grandfather, as his great-grandmother, we just don't know these things. So when you take the first letter and name that first letter with the same letter that your grandmother had, we don't know. But we do know that reincarnation is part of God's master plan, and we are here, every single one of us is not an individual in the sense that we're just here to fulfill our mission. We're here as a total mission to fulfill God's master plan, which is to spread goodness and kindness in the world, which is what we were given 600,000 Jews at Mount Sinai when God gave the Torah. If you look over here, this is reincarnation. Enhances personal identity by providing a unique purpose, augments mission with previous good deeds. So, for example, in my previous lifetime, I did good deeds and bad deeds. The bad deeds were cleansed, so to speak, by Gehenna, by hell. The bad deeds were cleansed by suffering and pain. But the good deeds stay forever. So I have the good deeds of my soul from the previous lifetime and the good deeds from now, and it kind of is good for me. And this is the pathway to realizing God's master plan, provides a role within the general human mission. As Viktor Frankl is saying, that when you know you have a mission which is forever, it's resilience, it's strength, determination, and you have a personal responsibility. You can't just say, oh, well, it's my life. I can do what I want, when I want, how I want. No, you have a specific mission to fulfill. Okay, and this is what Viktor Frankl said. Mental health is this tension between what one has already achieved and what one still ought to accomplish. Okay, and this is what it does. Determination to attain a goal, strength to overcome obstacles, change the attitude towards a circumstance, finding the potential within suffering, seizing every moment. I would say this is the biggest lesson of tonight's class, seizing every moment. When you have a moment to do a mitzvah, don't stand behind. Don't say no. Do the mitzvah. Do the mitzvah. Even if it's tough, do the mitzvah, because that could be your mission in this world. I'm going to see this one more thing over here. Okay, one second. One more video here. Here's the key points of what we learned so far tonight.
Lesson 5. Where we go again. 1. Adam possessed the Jewish master soul that ultimately branched out into the 600,000 souls that received the Torah at Mount Sinai. All subsequent Jewish souls are offshoots of these soul roots. 2. The 600,000 primary souls were each given a part of the world to perfect through fulfillment of the 613 mitzvot. When a soul accomplishes its mission, it itself also gains rectification and elevation. 3. Every root soul must also study each of the Torah's 4 layers of teaching and uncover its unique part in Torah. 4. Few, if any, of the original souls completed all 613 mitzvot, nor the required study during their original lifetimes. Reincarnation provides souls with additional opportunities to complete their missions and the rectification of the world and themselves. 5. When a person dies, all the refined elements of their soul return to heaven. A new soul, built from the elements that were left unrectified, is then grafted from the stem soul and returned to this world. 6. As a general rule, our souls are reincarnations, but it is impossible to be conscious of or to accurately sense the experiences of our previous lifetimes. 7. Clues to the nature of our soul's unique task in this world can be gleaned from A. Our strengths and passions, B. Our weaknesses and struggles, and C. Our unique life circumstances. 8. The Kabbalistic view of reincarnation does not deny us our personal identity. Each of us is a complete and unique individual who is simultaneously and integrally linked to a far greater reality. Reincarnation ascribes greater importance to our existence and provides each of us a unique role within the overall human mission.
Okay, 1 second.